Well, welcome. I'm Victoria Cobb, president of the Family Foundation. We're thrilled that you're back with one of our VIP chats today. Maybe this is your first one. We've been doing a series ever since, really since COVID started and we pivoted and had to go home. We started bringing on some experts so that you had an opportunity to hear from them even when we couldn't be in person. So we thought today there was just a critical issue that we knew was on the hearts and minds of a lot of folks. And no, it was not the presidential debate. We are not going to talk about that today. I think everybody needs to dismiss that and let it go. It was just a little much for most people. But we are going to talk about the judicial confirmation that is in front of us. And that, I think, is an exciting thing and actually gives us a lot more motivation with our vote and our energies surrounding the election. I'm going to tell you a couple things going on at the Family Foundation first before we get to our main speakers, just so that you have your calendars and your activities ready to go with us and partner with us. We are gearing up for a big event this weekend, October 3rd at the Greater Richmond Convention Center from 10 o'clock until noon. We've got an awesome opportunity to hear from some candidates that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. We have Nick Freitas, candidate for the 7th Congressional District. We have U.S. Senate candidate Daniel Gade. We're bringing in Kurt Cox to give us a special session update, and you know the rumors surrounding him. We expect at some point we might hear a governor announcement candidate for 2021, but he's here to talk about what's going on with session. We're bringing in some interesting other folks that have some initiatives going on themselves. Tim Anderson, who is just an attorney out in Portsmouth, but has done a fantastic job of exposing corruption. In particular, he was very instrumental in bringing the charges against Senator Lucas for inciting a rally when a statue fell down in Portsmouth as a result of her telling the police to stand down. He's going to talk about the redistricting amendment, something on the minds of a lot of folks. We're also bringing in a mom, Tara Durant, who was caught in one of the mobs, one of the riots that happened in Fredericksburg. And in fact, her 911 call kind of got famous because it was basically like, sorry, we can't help you. And so we wanted to hear those stories. And the purpose of the event is to encourage folks that we have a month left before the election. I'd like to think that we can do more than just give our vote in that last month. I'd like to think that there are things we could be doing with our friends, our neighbors. There's still time to be registering voters, and we have a targeted list of who needs to be registered, who we believe are conservatives that are not registered in the proper congressional districts to where they live. So let's be a part of that effort. So that's the purpose. We also have a pastor's lunch. If your pastor is not signed up, go to our website, get him the information. There's a lunch with Bishop Harry Jackson. He's an amazing speaker, has an interesting book out on race right now called A Manifesto for Christians about, I can't remember the exact title, but it's about the role of righteousness and justice together on the race issue. A great message, but he's also here to motivate us to be engaged in this election, how important it is. He is part of President Trump's evangelical team that goes out and talks to audiences about why evangelicals, despite the debate performance maybe of both candidates, care about the issues and should go out and vote this coming November. Actually, you can vote now. In Virginia, you already can go in person to your registrar. That's our recommendation, is not actually to put it in the mail. Our recommendation is show up during the hours of your county registrar and go to vote. But all those things coming up right around the corner. We are super excited. I also want to make sure that you're up to date on our sex text line effort to shut that thing down. I hope you've read our emails. If you haven't, go to our website. At the top, there's a banner, #StopSexTextLine, and that is to deal with VDH, the Department of Health. Our governor has his people sending our teens postcards that are animated. I should have brought mine to show you, but that are animated saying, hey, if you got questions about the birds and the bees, text a perfect stranger. So we're trying to shut that down. We'd really like you to be a part of that. So there's a whole lot going on. And I thought about having this webinar come to you and having Josh, our legal counsel for our Founding Freedoms Law Center. I thought about kind of doing it in this vein because we have in fact launched our law arm, which is a whole new effort for us. We are looking at the Virginia Values Act and waiting to see, unfortunately, which churches and schools are going to be victims of this new terrible law that our General Assembly passed. We're also looking at what's going to happen when we have a health commissioner who is saying they will mandate the vaccine regardless of any religious preferences. We're already hearing that some of the top makers of the vaccine are including fetal tissue as part of their efforts. So abortion-related byproducts, really tragic. And so we're concerned. We're concerned, and we're gearing up, preparing the legal path for what happens if we need to defend our right to make our own healthcare decisions rather than the Commissioner of Health. So lots going on with our law center, and want to keep you informed on that. Feel free to go to either our website, where you can click over to it, or Founding Freedom's website as well. Founding Freedom's Law Center would be awesome to get you kind of plugged in. So with that, I'm going to remind you of the parameters of kind of how these go. We're going to bring on our guests in just a moment to talk about this important nomination. But if you want, you are able to, we've got everybody on mute, but you can go and put a question in the chat box, and that will get to our administrator, and then we'll go through them. Sometimes we have time for all the questions, sometimes we don't. We do the best we can, and we try to pick questions that are of pretty general interest. So if you've got something really specific, what we'll likely do is follow up with you afterwards. But if you've got a question, go ahead and stick that in the chat box. And don't forget, if you're not getting our information, you're not getting our email alerts, you really want to get signed up for that. If you're not part of our new Speak Up Virginia initiatives, you want to get plugged into our grassroots efforts. So I just want to kind of lay all that out for you. And now we'll get going with our guests. Let me go ahead and introduce, we have two awesome guests with us today. The first one is Mario Diaz. He is with Concerned Women for America. He is their legal counsel. And we have been partners with CWA on so many initiatives. Penny Nance and I often find ourselves at press conferences that conservative women are asked to be voices. A lot of times in these confirmations, if we recall the last confirmation, we needed conservative women speaking out because our nominees sometimes get framed as not so pro-woman. So we appreciate his efforts there, but he also is the author of a book called Be Spent, Winning the Fight for Freedom's Survival. So if you haven't read that, check it out, or after you hear him, you might go running out to grab that. You're going to see him, and you've probably seen him in the media and all sorts of things. He's actually barred at the U.S. Supreme Court. That's not actually true of a lot of attorneys. So that's pretty interesting. And most interestingly, I think, is that he has his law degree from a Catholic university, but a theological degree from a Baptist school. And so you can ask about theology on your own time, but I bet that's pretty interesting stuff. He's also, most importantly, the dad and husband, 4 kids, I understand. So he keeps busy. And so we're thrilled to have him. And then I'm going to also at the same time bring on our other guest, Gary Marx. Gary Marx right now is the senior advisor for the Judicial Crisis Network. Judicial Crisis Network is kind of one of the lead organizations in these nomination fights. This is actually Gary's 9th nomination fight, so to speak, his 9th battle that he's going to be going through and helping us work through as a country. They used to be called, Gary helped found this organization. They used to be called Judicial Confirmation Network, and they've changed it to Crisis, and I would argue it has become a crisis. We watched, especially with Kavanaugh, that it has become a crisis. Gary has a background in campaigns and all sorts of other things. Particularly, he worked with both Bush Cheney and Mitt Romney. We all have mixed opinions about Mitt, but today we like him because he's on board with doing the nomination. Yes. So we're thrilled for that. And then he's also got his own political arm, Madison Strategies. It does some consulting. And most importantly, I always have to add this, Gary's roots go back to working at the Family Foundation. So Gary and I worked together about 18, 20 years ago-ish when Gary was here at the Family Foundation. We've grown a little bit, changed a little bit, and so anyway, we're thrilled that Gary's moved on to some pretty exciting stuff. So with that, I'm gonna just say welcome and maybe just jump right into the questions if that's okay with you guys.
Excellent.
All right, maybe I'll start with Mario. What can you tell us about Amy Coney Barrett? So everybody, you hear the names. We heard her name actually the last go around. So tell everybody a little bit about her background and how it is that she came to be nominated for such an important position.
Yes. Well, Victoria, I want to thank you again for the invitation. We hold the Family Foundation in the highest esteem here at Concerned Women for America. And as you said, we've worked in many things in coalition, so we're glad that you're there. Also, I'm honored to be with Gary again, who's been a fellow soldier of many judicial confirmation battles going all the way back to Chief Justice Roberts. And we just had a great time doing it. A bit about Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, this is a nominee that is at the highest levels that you can think of. I think in that sense, she's has taken a traditional route, if there is such a thing, for a judgeship, if you will. She graduated at the top of her class at Notre Dame Law School, went on to clerk for Justice Scalia, whom we all hold in such high regards because of the judicial philosophy he really aspired for the court to have. Then she went to be in private practice for a number of years, and then ended up in 2017 nominated to the appellate court, the Seventh Circuit. As you know, we were very involved in her nomination because of the anti-religious, anti-Christian really attacks that she received, and we can talk more about that later on. In another sense, though, she is very much, she will bring diversity to the court, which is something, ironically, if you follow the mainstream media, right, that the conservatives have asked for a long time. For example, she will be the only sitting judge now who will not be graduated from Yale or Harvard. All other justices come from those two law schools in the entire country. Of course, she will be the mother of 7 kids, young kids. And that has been something bizarrely enough that she has been attacked for. But she represents something that women in particular, speaking on behalf of Concerned Women for America, have been looking for a long time. That perspective, that is something very important to us. And not only that, but she's a conservative woman, an originalist, a constitutionalist. She's the first one. I know some of you might be saying, what about Sandra Day O'Connor? She was nominated by a Republican president, by President Reagan, but she was not in her judicial philosophy aligned to what we would consider a constitutionalist, an originalist, a textualist. So here we have the first. If the media want to talk about diversity, about including new voices at the court, here you have somebody or a group represented that has never been represented in the court, in the high court, for in our entire history. So we're really excited about it. Again, at the Seventh Circuit, she just excelled in her writing, in her thoughtfulness, in her approach. And most of all, I would say, and I'll leave it at that for you to get some thought from Gary. I think we have seen that she is battle tested, in the sense that she's gotten pushback because of who she is, because of her faith, because of her family, because of her judicial philosophy too. And she has held her ground among the best of the best. And this is something that we have even looked at even beyond a conservative justice or a conservative judge. We're looking for somebody who will stand when it counts. In those cases where you will be really dragged through the mud, through the mainstream media, we need justices who will stand up for the constitutional principles they believe, even if they will be vilified in the media. So we're getting the full package here.
Wow, that's a fantastic summary. And I think people are really thrilled. I know women like myself that have 4 kids and also doing a job, see ourselves in her and go, this is really neat to have somebody represent, sort of coming from, as you said, the motherhood angle. And I think that is what kind of flies in the face of the left narrative, right? That is what they're struggling with, honestly, is that she can be so grounded, so faith-filled, have 7 children, and still have this amazing career. Because remember, the left reminds us all the time, if you really want to have an amazing career, you better abort your child, right? Like she stands in exact opposition, because she's made her home a place of hospitality to children, despite her amazing academic and sort of ambitious career. And so it's a beautiful thing. And I think people, we don't know how she does it all, but we're all impressed. And so, Gary, I think the next question everybody's got is the big one, which is, tell us about the process. How long is this going to take? Is she going to be able to be confirmed by the election? Everybody's a little like, uh-oh, how does this play out? We got November, we got her on the line. Give us kind of an overview of what that looks like for people who aren't as familiar, or maybe who had to turn off the Kavanaugh hearings because it was just too much.
Yeah. Great question. Great to be with you, Victoria, as always, and back with Family Foundation Family, which I will always be a part of and have been for the last 20 years. I'm excited to have been a supporter and continue to support the efforts there. And always good to be with Mario. He and I have been partners in crime and done a lot of these over the years. Over 15 years that I've been in this fight with 9 Supreme Court nomination battles, and everyone's a little bit unique, but all of them have this time crunch element to it. And when this opening occurred, we have a lot of people of faith on this webinar, and I know that what I heard in my spirit was, Gary, don't worry, I've got this. I am a God who is never late. I am always on time. And I think that from the timing element, we know we have more than enough time to get this done, but there will be an effort by the Democrats to drag this out, to slow down, to obstruct, throw up obstacles, everything they can do. My organization had an ad initially talking about the precedent in terms of the timing that these battles have taken. And if you go back historically, we know that Sandra Day O'Connor, who Mario mentioned, her nomination battle took all of 33 days in total. John Paul Stevens only took 19 days in total. Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself only took 42 days in total. We have more than 42 days at the start of this to do this. We have had a very united and unified Senate, including some folks like Mitt Romney, who have gotten us to the point where we have 51 Republican senators who've said, hey, we want to move forward with this process, and just a couple that have said, hey, I'd prefer to vote for this afterwards and think it should be handled after the election. Senator McConnell hasn't laid out the exact date and time, but we do know that the hearings will be starting Columbus Day. That's just in a few weeks. October 12th will be the hearings week. We'll have opening statements that day. The 13th and the 14th will be the big fireworks days when Amy Coney Barrett will be before the committee getting questions. And then the last day, that Thursday of that week, that's just when you hear outside witnesses and so forth. Experts like Mario will go in there and share comments and thoughts. So that's what that looks like. You'd probably see a confirmation vote in the committee, maybe a week after, maybe around October 22nd. And then that following week, you'd see a final cloture vote, debate, and final vote. Maybe it would take all the way until October 30th, but that's very doable to finish up that week. And then people would go do trick-or-treating on Saturday, church on Sunday, and roll into voting right that Tuesday afterwards, as far as in-person voting. That's the timing of it. It can be done, and I'm encouraged that things are moving well so far. But don't forget, this is not just a spiritual battle. It's a big part of it, but it's a political battle where you don't know what's around the corner. If the Kavanaugh battle taught us anything, just when you think this is over and you're comfortable and you've had a good hearings week, you never know what they'll throw at you. And the lesson of Bork, Thomas, and Kavanaugh is that the left is willing to do anything and everything. And sadly, we've already seen that with attacks on, religious bigoted attacks on Amy Coney Barrett, attacks on her adoption of her 2 beautiful children from Haiti. So those are the kinds of things that we expect more of, and we're going to be ready for.
And on that sort of expect anything note, tell me, I'm assuming that Senate Democrats would want to do their best to delay the process, right? So if you can't win, stall. Any specific delay tactics that we would expect? We are glad, I would say, that it's a female, in the sense of we're not going to hear, I think, the same accusations against Kavanaugh that were unfounded. But tell me, are there delay things they can use that could actually work?
Mario, you or me?
Go ahead if you want. I have some thoughts, but you go ahead.
Yeah, at root, the best ways that they've been able to delay was to get members of the committee to peel off and agree with them. And we saw that with Senator Flake last time, and he put forward and said, hey, I'm just not going forward. And that would lead to, he wanted to have a week
Gary, I think we may have lost your audio. Mario, why don't you take it away while Gary figures out if his audio clicked off in the middle, or if the internet.
Look, I think there's a certain delineation that gives us some hope, especially in the Judiciary Committee. And we've mentioned Kavanaugh a few times, and something changed with the nomination of Justice Kavanaugh. You see some leadership, for example, from somebody like Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He knows this is not business as usual, where they try to kind of object and delay. So I think he's committed to that, and I think we need to remind him of what happened before, and even what they have done to Judge Barrett up until this point. Everything has been unfair, if you will. Everything has been, and I think they recognize it. I think they know they are losing that battle. So I think it will be very difficult for them to use those tactics at the Judiciary Committee, even if they don't show up, as some have said. They don't need the traditional quorum that they would need at the floor. So if they don't show up, we get through the nominees and the testimony faster. So they will be actually helping along. So I think because of that, some of the things they will try to do will not work. And then when it comes to the floor, I think Senator McConnell, again, Leader McConnell, is committed to this. And I think it will be very difficult for them to stop it. I think they know that. And if they can push the vote till after the election, I think they'll consider that a win. But they know, I think, that this is a highly qualified nominee that is above reproach, really. And all they can do is complain about how they have been treated before with Merrick Garland, and we can talk about how that's different, or because of the president pushing a vote so close to the election. But as far as her nomination, her qualifications for it, and what they can do to stop it, I don't think they can.
Well, that's encouraging. I think people are encouraged by that, and I do think because she's kind of been down the road of confirmation, and we've seen her in a committee with with these folks, I think that does kind of give us a sense of, we kind of have a feel of how this is going to go down. I'd like to think that they tried to stop her last time and they weren't able to. So I'd like to think that that's kind of what we're going to see. I did hear mainstream media actually acknowledging it's very unlikely anything can be done, which I thought was, step one, check. At least media is feeling a little defeated right now. So
Victoria, let me add to that. The process can be streamlined compared to other of these Supreme Court battles, because she was just before the committee, like you said, a few years back, because you just simply have to update some of the information, the FBI background check, those kinds of things. Also, she did not serve in a White House like Kavanaugh, where there's hundreds of thousands of documents that they're going to demand and pull from and go through. So I think that that's doable. And for all the Virginia folks that are on this call, it's interesting to note, while they did try to stop her, there were 3 Democratic votes that she won. They were 3 Catholic votes that she won. Joe Manchin in West Virginia, no surprise. Joe Donnelly from Indiana, who's now lost election because of his stance on Kavanaugh. And most interestingly, Virginia's own senator, former vice presidential nominee, Senator Tim Kaine, actually voted for her. So it'll be very interesting to watch how, I believe, he will wiggle out of his previous vote and find a way to oppose her this time, but watch for that flip to happen.
That's great that we'll be sort of center seat in Virginia, watching our own senators on this. He struggles with how to apply his faith a bit in the public square in general, on votes, on people. I don't think he wants to see anti-Catholic rhetoric, but he also doesn't necessarily want to actually vote according to the doctrines of the church many times. So it's very confusing for him. All right, for both of you, tell me, we hear lots of speculation about the role that this nomination is going to play in the election. So, in one sense, a lot of people go, oh, Trump's just going to, his base is going to be juiced up. Other folks go, well, look at the fundraising that happened the first second that this came up on the Democrat side. So what is this going to do? Is it juicing up both sides? Is there one side more likely to benefit? Just give me, each of you, a little perspective on that.
Go ahead, Gary. seniority?
Yeah, I'll go first. To me, the crucial question is not so much the macro level. It's first the impact in the states, this U.S. Senate states where there are big elections, and how does it play out there? And clearly, we've seen that with McSally in Arizona, Cory Gardner in Colorado, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, Joni Ernst in Iowa. They believe that Supreme Court fights are a winning issue for them. We saw Republicans increase their majority after the Kavanaugh fight and win in crucial states like North Dakota, Missouri, and Indiana, and knock off incumbent senators by the power of this issue. So they believe that electorally it will help build their base. Amy Coney Barrett will appeal to suburban and swing voters, especially moms, maybe those soccer moms, security moms that we've talked about from past elections. So that's the calculus in those particular states. And the question is, how does it play in Maine with Susan Collins? I think she's in a unique category, her own category. And I'll let Mario tackle maybe how he thinks it plays nationally in the presidential race.
Yeah, look, I think this is actually, we're talking to a bunch of people who are activists who want to be involved, and I think this is where we can do the most good. We can actually have an impact if you get involved in this issue and talk to your friends and family and let them know what's going on, how important the Supreme Court is, first of all, the sort of cases, that will come before the court. For example, here's something that a lot of people don't think about. The Department of Justice has been dealing with all this violence that's been going on around the country. That they took a very unusual step of declaring Antifa a revolutionary group, and they're taking some steps that suggest to us these sort of the actions they take against these groups are gonna end up before the court. They're gonna go up to the Supreme Court, and those are sort of issues that we don't think about traditionally about being part of what the court is involved in, but they have great impact for our communities and our schools and our families. The lockdowns, all these things are going to end up being legal fights. So I encourage you to make that point. But then beyond that, I think, a lot of people, a lot of conservatives, a lot of Christians, a lot of Republicans, when they hear the media narrative, did it to Merrick Garland, why are they not doing it now? It is a persuasive argument at first glance. You look at that and you say, yeah, we should be fair. The situation is completely different, okay? As we said before, and I'm hopeful that many of you are aware of it, but at the time when Merrick Garland was nominated, the Senate had flipped in between. But when President Obama was first voted in, he had the Senate with him. And in between that, we had the midterm elections and the Senate flipped, so that the American people gave us that divided government, if you will. And in contrast, what happened with President Trump is that in those midterms, he got more people to the Senate. So he was given the mandate, if you will, and especially, again, the court was a big reason why he was elected. And so he got kind of another approval to say, go ahead with this. So he has a different scenario where if the Democrats were in power, they would be justified in not moving forward and saying, let's wait for the next election. But right now, it makes absolutely no sense. It makes no sense, basically, and most importantly, I want you to remember that these are, just like I said about Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham needing to remember what they did to Kavanaugh, we need to remember that we're not dealing with anybody that wants to really debate this issue fairly and be fair to us. All right, they want to defeat us with no mercy whatsoever. They talk about packing the court. They talk about making I'm from Puerto Rico. Don't you think I've heard this talk about making Puerto Rico a state for all my life? And they talk about making DC a state also, just to get 2 more senators. These are things they have talked for the longest time. They will do this if they get the chance. Whatever the president does, the president could say today that he will withdraw the nomination. They will still pack the courts when they get the chance. So that's what we're dealing with, and we need to be assertive and sort of seeing this, I think, in a spiritual sense, as Gary was saying, as an opportunity that Providence presented to us. Nobody was planning for this. We didn't want this, you know, as opposed to what we hear from the other side. Every time Justice Ginsburg was in the hospital or something, conservatives were praying for her health and wishing her well. So this was an opportunity that we've been given, and I think conservatives need to seize the moment methodically. It doesn't have to be with any rancor or anything, but in a way that shows that the process, how it should be, and how the judicial nomination battles should be. They shouldn't be this political. They shouldn't be this difficult. Judicial nominations should not be. And the only reason they are so important, the only reason they care about it so much, is because they have taken the role of a judge and making it into a policy-making position. And so for that reason, they care about it so much. And all we're doing now is trying to restore the model of where the judge will allow the Family Foundation and Concerned Women for America to pass policy and not have judges strike it down because they don't agree with that policy. If we get to that, we would all be better, and then judicial nomination fights will not be this contentious. But they started it with Justice Bork back in the day just because of his policy preferences, and they have continued to escalate it all throughout. Remember, the only reason President Trump has been so successful, aside from our brilliant work, Gary, right, is really because of what they did. What Harry Reid did in taking the judicial filibuster and just by his raw power in the Senate, he did away with it, and now he's living under his own rules, and they can't stop it, and they hate it. If they go the route of changing the court or anything, they will also regret it. So I invite you to be involved in this fight, and I think it can make a big difference if we educate our fellow citizens.
Yeah, Mario, let me just add to that and expand in one important way. I think, you know, the crisis we talk about in the judiciary is one of this philosophical view of a living, breathing constitution. And that perspective leads to judicial activism and an out of control judiciary. So that's what we're trying to attack. And from a political perspective, you know, they don't want to really go after Amy Coney Barrett on her qualifications, her background, her biography. That's not good ground to go after. They want to flip it into, you know, the Affordable Care Act and Roe v. Wade. That's going to be where they go at. And, you know, when we look at the decisions of the Supreme Court in history, there can be no more judicial activist decision than Roe v. Wade. At its heart, that's something that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said the scope of that sweeping decision should not have been done and led to where we're at. So that all of this is connected, and I'll just close out from a political standpoint. I think we know that besides talking about Amy Coney Barrett, our efforts need to be highlight her, but also highlight Joe Biden and his refusal to answer that question last night. That I don't want to talk about the debate a lot, but this was important. He refused to answer whether he would pack the court, whether he would end the filibuster, and he has also similarly refused to tell the American people and be transparent about who he would put on the Supreme Court. He has refused that, and that's a big difference in things that we need to point out.
That is a great point to kind of get us to another line of questioning. A lot of folks, you know, have heard from the first election till now, there's this list of judges, that Trump has this list of judges. Unfortunately, we can't be 100% certain that everyone will rule the way we want to just because they're off of this list. But what is it about this list? What makes it reliable? And I'm going to sort of add a question that came in from one of our viewers, which is along these same lines, which is how can we be confident that Barrett's not going to be another Republican dud? That was the term, like Connor, Kennedy, Roberts. Tell me, why do we have confidence right now?
Sure. I'll tackle this first. So let's go back and look historically how this came about. You know, President Trump was running in 2016, and he did not have a long history of trust with conservatives and or evangelicals. and he was asked about Supreme Court nominees. And he said, I think I want to nominate people in the mold of Scalia and Thomas. And he said that at a debate. And then he began to expand upon that. And in talking with Don McGahn, who was his counsel at the time, and then White House counsel, there was the idea that the president had himself that, well, why don't I put out a list of people that I would, pick for the Supreme Court, and be very clear, be very transparent with the American people, the type of judges that I would want to see elevated to the Supreme Court. And, that was very bonding between him and a lot of voters in 2016, because he was transparent. He had people on there that had a certain philosophy, certain age, all of these things were helpful. So he had an initial list of 11 names, then he added 10 more later. So when people were voting, they had about 21 names, and they could see a flavor, a pattern for the type of justices he would pick. Later on, he added 5 more, and then just a couple weeks ago, before we even knew about this sad news with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, he added about 20 more names. So we're at about 44 names right now, and you can see a clear pattern. Now, to the point of your question, there is no 100% foolproof way of picking judges. All of these people are sinful, fallen people just like you and me. And until Jesus himself comes back to earth, much like how we look at political candidates, you will never find someone you agree with 100% of the time. There are differences on how they approach stare decisis, and I'll let Mario wax eloquent on that as an attorney. But there's no 100%. But I will say, and this is a big but, big caveat, each time we go through one of these battles, that vetting gets better, that vetting gets stronger. Looking for courage and backbone in somebody's biography gets better. Seeing somebody like Amy Coney Barrett and the nomination fight that she went through, and being attacked by Dianne Feinstein for her Catholic faith, and bearing up under that and looking at those life stories is very important. We are now on the other side of disappointing decisions like Bostock, decisions in areas of law that didn't even exist maybe 3 years ago. When the list was created, no one really was thinking in detail about different areas of the law that we might now. Technology changes that. So your vetting's always changing and getting better and getting stronger. But I am very, very confident in Amy Coney Barrett based on the history that we have. And I think she's been a tremendously unifying pick for conservatives of every stripe, for people of faith, and has been received tremendously so far.
Mario, is there anything you can add about decisions that we've actually seen her write about, any actual sort of written background? Because I think some people are kind of going, I like the list, I like the, but this time after Bostock, actually, that really is sort of the moment where everyone went, can we know a little more about these people?
Yeah. No, I think Gary is right, and I'll start with kind of the bad news, right? In that, look, there is no 100% proof, even if they say so out loud. We lawyers are good about making an argument on any situation. So even Senator Josh Oliver, who I appreciate being so strong in wanting an answer, if you will, about their view on Roe. There are ways you can get around that. Stare decisis, or the idea of precedent, is one of the ideas that you can do that. You can say that Roe was wrongly decided and still have a very big problem about should it be overturned. It's kind of another legal question that some attorneys are able to kind of, parse through and come in the other side of the other. So we're not 100% sure. Having said that, your judicial philosophy and what you're committed to will determine a lot of what you do, and sort of the peace that you have in making decisions. Look, I don't want to sugarcoat this for anybody. It would be very difficult. It will be very difficult for anybody if Roe is challenged at the Supreme Court. It is one thing just to say, yeah, it should be overturned. It is another to put your pen and say, all right, I'm going to change the life of millions of people. I'm going to probably unleash unrest like we haven't seen yet. By doing this today, I'm going to announce it. I'm going to put my name to it. I'm going to be the one. Okay, so that is why we should have never had this in the first place, right? It's always harder to take something away, if you will, than it is to put it in the first way. So I don't want to sugarcoat that. It is very difficult, and that's why then you need somebody who's willing to take their role and their limited role as a judge seriously and say, all right, this is what my role requires and no more, and beyond that it is not my responsibility. The idea or the issue of Roe and life as a whole at the Supreme Court, it's not going to be a one-time sweep. Actually, I want to make that clear also. If Roe is overturned today, it's a nightmare for Victoria Cobb and Concerned Women for America, right? We all of a sudden have to fight 50 different fights, and we will. The culture of life, I think the other side makes it all about Roe, but we are creating a culture that protects and defends every person for their intrinsic value, right? Given from God. And that is beyond Roe. Roe is kind of like one wrong decision, legal wrong decision, but after that, we have to do so much more that it's not even, comparable. So overturning Roe is not the goal here, even though we think justice demands that it falls down, right? Just like Dred Scott was a decision that, yes, it was a long decision, it had a lot of precedent, but it needed to end, it needed to be overturned. But Justice Barrett is the type of justice that will do what is required of her and not read into or try to wiggle herself out of a difficult situation. So I say that to say, uh, on the good part, if I think she were presented with the idea of Roe, she would approach it and reach the conclusion that the law and the Constitution demands. But if the question comes about an abortion restriction law, for example, and it does not pertain to Roe, as we just had with June Medical, for example, um, then she would not go out of her way to do a judicial activist decision and do something that is not required, right? That case rested on Casey and that whole viability issue, and but I think we have in a potential Justice Barrett is somebody committed to the text of the Constitution, her limited role, and who will not, try to uh, update the language, if you will. I'll give you another example very, very quickly that your listeners will be aware of also. We have this whole transgender issue, women in sports, the word sex in federal law, for example. And there's another example where I'm fully confident that Justice Barrett will look at a word as it was written at the time it was written. This is what it meant. So you can't just change the meaning of language. This is the whole point of originalism that Justice Barrett, if you watch the press conference of her announcement, she said, Justice Scalia's philosophy is my philosophy. And what she was saying is Justice Scalia believed we take the text with the public meaning of the law or the Constitution or whatever it is at the time it was written. So if you change today and you want to say that some law now encompasses more things, you're changing the law. You're doing legislative work. So we have somebody who stands against that. She's been public about it. And again, I think in her demeanor, in her approach to the law, to even to the hearings, you can see a sort of peace in that. She's presenting herself not to try to be approved by the Senate, but she's presenting herself as who she is, and it is up to them to approve or not. I think most people approve, most senators approve, most of the American people approve of her approach, and we'll be happy with what we get from her.
All right, let me get you to spell out and maybe just literally almost like definitions. We had a supporter ask, you've talked about judicial philosophy, particularly Mario, and they've asked, is there a difference between a textualist and an originalist? What do those exact words, we're going to hear them thrown around the media, and a lot of people are not lawyers. I just play one on TV, but I'm not even a lawyer. So just maybe two, are they the same, or are there two different definitions when we hear those words, originalist, textualist?
They are the same. This is why we try to use the word constitutionalist now, just to send one consolidated message, if you will. They just appear in different contexts. Just Judge Barrett herself has written about that, how they, in different contexts in law, you use different terms, but they mean the same when properly defined. And again, it is this idea that you take the text with the public meaning, with the general meaning, if you will, of what the words meant at the time. In other words, you cannot have a senator who votes for a law thinking to himself or even expressing out loud that the words mean something else to him. And so then a judge cannot look into what the senator intended to do and then make that the law. No, they must look at the meaning of the words that are on the page. Those were the meaning, the words that were passed, and then from that meaning, from that law that is passed, from that meaning of the words on the text, then make their decision. This
Hey,
will
Mario,
come again. Go ahead.
I've got Barrett's own words here, and she's a disciple of Scalia, who believed in the principles of both textualism and originalism. So Barrett says, quote, textualism and originalism are essentially two names for the same methodology, one arising in the field of statutory interpretation, the other in constitutional decision making. The Constitution and statutes are legal texts, and the duty of a judge is to interpret their provisions according to the meaning they bore at the time they were adopted. Rival theories such as purposism, pragmatism, and living constitutionalism empower judges to ignore and override legal texts in order to impose their own solutions to the problems of the age, end quote. Judges are not policymakers, is another thing that she talked about in her White House remarks. So I think that gives you a flavor for her very clearly.
Amen.
All right, there's a lot of questions on how we think she's going to rule on certain issues, which is really hard to answer. And I'm not sure whether we should really go too far down the road. I'll ask this one because we did mention Bostock. It is top of mind for a lot of folks. Do you all believe that the right case, the right fact set, whatever it might be, could get there, and that she would be comfortable overturning something as recent as Bostock? Because we would argue, in fact, that it was the most ridiculous understanding of the word sex to even contemplate that the founders ever could have intended, and that the whole idea of how we got to the Bostock opinion, we think flies in the face of originalism and textualism, this whole concept of what writers meant. So what do you think? I mean, it's such a recent decision, but it is so far afoul from what we would.
Yeah, I think the problem you have with such decisions is what you just said, is the right case coming before them. Again, a conservative, a textualist, an originalist is not going to go out of the way to make a case that is not about something, to take the opportunity, if you will, to overrule precedent that is not pertinent. So you have to have the case arise before them that challenges a specific, and that is up to the legal groups, that are bringing these cases to set up the right scenario, if you will, to bring those questions before them. But beyond that, as we mentioned, that decision, because of Justice Gorsuch kind of inclination, he made it so narrow, and swore, that it wouldn't apply in any other context, that he has set up a whole bunch of cases in other contexts in federal law that will be coming before the court. And again, I think you want somebody like Justice Barrett there that will be able to forget, if you will, about the which way the wind is blowing, and how the media will perceive, and just strategically and methodically, sorry, go through the step of interpreting the law and ruling on it. I think you've seen that from the conservative justices on the court in many cases, but unfortunately, we've seen them waver in some other ones. I was going to mention that we are going to see kind of this uh, conundrum at the court when the upcoming Affordable Care Act case that is coming, the Obamacare case. This is one of the first ones that's going to come, and it has to do with this idea of the law that were passed and some actions that they took later, which was to zero out the mandate. So it's gonna come down. That is why those people in the media who are just saying Justice Barrett will do this miss the point of originalism and of out of what she's committed to, because it's not an easy question to answer when you think about the idea that they passed a law, it was upheld, and now they have done something else to that law. And what does it mean? Did they um, did away with the mandate, or did they just zero it out and the mandate is still there uh, and passed in law? So I think we can be confident in what she's going to do in all these cases going forward, and overturning whatever needs to be overturned uh, when the time comes.
All right, we've got time for basically just a little rapid fire. So I'm just gonna throw some things at you, short answers, just guesses, fun stuff. How many Republicans vote to confirm at the end?
Oh, I'm going to go with there will be 51 Republicans, and there will be 2 Republicans that vote present, and that'll be
Yes.
Collins and Murkowski. And we're going to see probably Joe Manchin's, also vote present or no because of the process, and that they will vote before the election.
Yes, I agree. I expect 51 Republicans, and I don't expect any Democrats to join in kind of in the process protest. But hey, you know what? We'll call her after that, Justice Barrett, just as well. It doesn't matter how many votes you get.
That would be a landslide compared to Kavanaugh. That would be a whole 51 instead of 50.
All right, what's going to be the longest speech made by a senator in the hearings? And maybe if you want to guess who's going to make it, but that's harder.
Oh, I'm going to go Kamala Harris, and she's going to go to that hearing, and she's got to perform because she believes it's the Harris-Biden ticket. And, there's a clear expectation there as the leader of the Harris-Biden ticket that she's on the mark, and she's got to really deliver. Unlike her previous performance with Kavanaugh, where she pushed a lot of buttons and acted like she had some secret super, amazing information. And, Kavanaugh called her bluff and is like, what do you mean? What do you have? And she had nothing. She's going to have to perform better this time, and that she's going to be the one to go to the longest. But Spartacus Booker could be a close second.
Mario, you got any thoughts on who's gonna?
I will give you. I agree. Unfortunately, that was my first thought, that Senator Harris has to seize the moment. But I'll give you something else. Because as I said earlier, I think the Democrats, for the most part, will back down from the anti-religious attacks. But there's one senator that really, really still preoccupies my mind, which is Senator Hirono. She has been especially vicious, not only in this, but in a bunch of issues. And so don't expect it to be completely devoid of such low blows, if you will. I think they will still come up, and she might be the one to bring it up.
All right, I got one. The last one for you is special for Virginians, and that is because we had a governor who they dug up his thesis. We had a governor who they dug up his yearbook and found blackface. We know what happened with Kavanaugh. Have you seen her yearbook, and do we know what's in it?
No, I have not seen her yearbook, and yes, I'm sure that there have been appropriate work done Immediately when she was nominated, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they were on the phone trolling for any former classmate that ever went to school with them. That was day one. So they've all been made available to these reporters by now too, if they hadn't received them already in advance. So yeah, I think that tactic has been delved into, and if there was something, you would have already seen it, truthfully.
Yeah.
The main attacks have been more on the evangelical Catholic group she's a part of called People of Praise. And, they've gotten a hold of all those newsletters where they had, dramatic, controversial things like birth announcements that were there related to Amy Coney Barrett's family and her kids, and graduation announcements and scary things like that. So, if there was something in those newsletters, those would have already been out there and highlighted, but I think that's been done.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think there is nothing, because of her character and her interest really and her deep faith. What you're gonna find is this Handmaid's Tale type of attack against her. That she's submissive. And to people of faith who are watching, this is the conversation we want to have. So don't shy away from a conversation about the role of faith in public policy. We need to go back to that and say, what is it? And demand that the media treat our views fairly and accurately and don't jump into caricatures. I think we're being fairly successful in it, but I think we need more. We need more from pastors, and we need more from lay leaders to just talk about the role of faith and talk about words like handmaids and where does it come from, and that their demeaning of such words and such terms is offensive, and it shows their ignorance and their prejudices and not ours. So let's be vocal about it, and it doesn't have to be mean, and it doesn't have to be in a way that we kind of stoop to their level, but we can stand on what we believe and make sure that the American people, those who are watching, if you will, who might be actually interested, because this is the thing, right? They are not interested in hearing us explain it, but those who are watching will see us not only proclaim the gospel, but sort of live it out in this moment.
You're absolutely right. And I know for Catholics, they've experienced anti-Catholic bigotry over the season, especially in the court. We look at the Blaine amendments just came down just this term. And so this is very fresh. And if they dig it back up, we're going to experience, I think it's going to be very personal for a lot of folks. For Christians in general, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, the more we say your faith is not wanted, I think it does, in fact, hopefully encourage people to say, we very much have our rightful place in the public square, and faith is a part of that. In fact, faith is what drives things like her adopting children. I mean, that's the conversation we do want to have. So thank you for drawing that out. Yeah, Gary.
I just want to read a quote from John F. Kennedy that I think wraps this attack on Catholic faith up. And this is from 1960 when he spoke to the Greater Houston Ministerial Association. This is a very famous speech, but we need it to be refreshed in our mind. Quote, "I believe in an America that is officially neither Catholic, Protestant, nor Jewish, and where religious liberty is so indivisible that an act against one church is treated as an act against all. For while this year it may be a Catholic against for whom the finger of suspicion is pointed, in other years it has been and may someday be again a Jew or a Quaker or a Unitarian or a Baptist. Today I may be the victim, but tomorrow it may be you." So those words are important to put at the top of our mind as we see these hearings unfold. And as Mario pointed out, what Mazie Hirono and Sheldon Whitehouse and others may throw at Amy Coney Barrett.
Fantastic way to wrap. And I will just say this: actions that people can take, contacting our senators would be wise. They need to hear from you. Even if you don't think you're going to move their vote, you want to remind them they're on fragile ground. Mark Warner is running for re-election. Tim Kaine previously voted for her. So there's a reason to have conversations with those offices for our Virginians. And also, I assume that we're going to see some mobilization of folks outside the hearings, either in prayer or speaking out, or women standing for other women that deserve a fair hearing. People of faith standing up and saying her faith is rightfully a part of her. So we'll be making those opportunities aware. Certainly we're close enough to be up there by the court here in Virginia. And so we'll be letting you know when those things arise, if that's a way that you want to participate. So we're just grateful for our guests today. I know that I got a ton out of it. I'm sure that everyone else did. So thank you so much for being a part of it. And for everyone else, we hope we get to see you on Saturday at an election. Okay, Gary's got the last word here.
I have a question for Mario. I hear you might be doing a bus tour in Virginia. Is there anything you can announce today? Anything in stone yet?
And not anything in stone, but we will be doing a bus to 13 states, 50 or around there stops around, and it will include Virginia. We'll be also doing something in DC, so stay tuned to the emails from Victoria, so that you can be part of that. The Women for Amy tour will be happening starting next week, so we're gearing up, and our President Penny Nance, as you mentioned earlier, will be leading that, and we hope everybody can join us so that we can show another side, you know, to protest and rallies and stuff. Happy warriors, we call them. We do it with joy and not, you know, destruction and things like that. So I appreciate you. And if you want more information, it should be on our website, concernedwomen.org, later on.
Awesome. And websites are in the chat box. I'll add CWA there, but our Family Foundation website's there. The Founding Freedoms Law Center, our legal side, is there as well. So check those out. And with that, I'll just say thank you, and everyone have just a fantastic afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.